got a hunch it's me from here. I mean, it's one ball, corner pocket.
Before closing his eyes for the last time, Paul Newman whispered to the reporter by his bedside. She never fell into the sea by herself. It wasn't a random remark. It was a confession, one that came after more than half a century of silence. And the name he mentioned right after was Robert Wagner, the man once called his closest friend. Lying weak on his hospital bed, Newman's body was frail, but his voice remained steady. He stared into the distance, speaking slowly, as if confessing not just for himself, but for an entire generation that had lived under false glamour. He hid more than people think, Newman said, and I've stayed silent for too long. From that moment, Robert Wagner's image as the perfect gentleman began to crumble. Newman had opened the door to years of deceit, violence, and jealousy. A world where marriage, fame, and even love were nothing more than a perfectly staged performance. So what really happened aboard the Splendor on the night Natalie Wood disappeared? And why did Paul Newman choose to speak out only at the final hour of his life? Paul Newman once said in a 2007 interview with Vanity Fair in Hollywood, there are marriages that are not born of love, but of the fear of being forgotten. And in the mid-1970s, no one embodied that better than Robert Wagner and Natalie Wood, two stars, once considered the perfect icons of American cinema, whose glory had by then begun to fade. Los Angeles, 1971. Hollywood was entering a new era as a rebellious generation of actors like Al Pacino, Jack Nicholson, and Robert Redford replaced the classic gentleman archetype that Wagner had represented. The star of A Kiss Before Dying was now being excluded from major projects, while Natalie, the darling of West Side Story, was gradually disappearing from the screen after several box office failures. They were both terrified, Newman recalled. Terrified of no longer being mentioned. Terrified of being forgotten by Hollywood. At a Paramount party at the Beverly Hills Hotel in October 1971, Newman overheard director Henry Jaglom telling a Warner Brothers producer, "If they get back together, life will explode. Two dead names revived. It'll make huge news." Newman immediately understood that Hollywood was about to stage a fairy tale romance to save two fading stars. In February 1972, at the Beverly Hills Hotel, Wagner and Natalie happened to meet again at a party. But according to Newman, it was a scripted setup. Two photographers from Photoplay and People had already been invited, waiting to capture that destined moment. The photo of them smiling together later appeared on the March 1972 cover of People magazine with the headline, "Love Never Dies." Hollywood cheered, but Newman remained silent. There wasn't a spark between them, only a quiet calculation. They spoke like two people negotiating, not two lovers reunited. A few weeks later, on May 27, 1972, they married for the second time in Scottsdale, Arizona. The Los Angeles Times called it Hollywood's miracle, while Variety proclaimed, "Two old stars find their glow again in each other's arms." But Newman never forgot seeing Natalie sitting alone on the balcony after the wedding, holding a glass of wine and softly saying, "Paul, I'm just playing the same role again." This time, the audience seems to like it more. From then on, everything unfolded like a perfectly directed performance. Wagner held his wife's hand on the red carpet, kissed her forehead. For the cameras, smiled tenderly like the ideal husband. The Saturday Evening Post called him the new American man, and Vanity Fair praised a love that transcends time. But Newman saw the truth. When the lights went out, Wagner was cold, his eyes empty. He didn't look at her like a husband looks at his wife. He looked at her like an investment, a ticket back to center stage. By 1973, Wagner had begun controlling everything: the roles Natalie took, the clothes she wore, even her list of friends. Journalist Rona Barrett wrote in the September 1974 issue of Hollywood Confidential that Wagner never leaves his wife's side, but to Natalie it feels more like surveillance than love. Newman saw it too. He recalled a Beverly Hills party in August 1978 when a young producer offered Natalie a drink. Wagner gripped her hand so tightly that she winced. When she left the table, Newman noticed a bruise on her wrist. She said it was from a door he remembered, but her eyes didn't lie. They were the eyes of someone used to pretending. Still in public, they remained Hollywood's golden couple. Life magazine photographed the happy Hollywood family at their Malibu beach house in May 1979. In the photos, Natalie smiled brightly, while Wagner held her close, gazing out at the Pacific Ocean. But Newman, who sometimes visited, saw another kind of stage. "There's nothing more cruel," he said, "than watching a woman pretend to be happy to protect someone else's reputation." According to Newman, their second marriage was never built on love. It was a desperate compromise between two frightened souls. Wagner needed Natalie's light, he said, and she needed a man to make the audience believe she was still okay. When two fears meet, they don't create love, they create tragedy. In November 1980, backstage at the Actors Fund charity event in Los Angeles, Natalie sat next to Newman, her voice trembling slightly. "Paul, if one day I'm not here anymore, they'll say it was an accident. But, you know, nothing between Robert and me was ever real." Newman didn't reply. He knew that behind the dazzling facade the world adored, all that remained was a contract signed with fear and ambition. From those signs, Newman said in an audio recording released years later, "I knew that love was never real. It was just a play staged to keep two fading stars from disappearing entirely in the audience's eyes. And within that play, the seeds of violence, jealousy, and obsession with fame began to grow like an ember, waiting to burst into flames." The marriage between Robert Wagner and Natalie Wood was merely a contract framed by the flash of cameras, but inside it was decaying day by day. Paul Newman said Hollywood can create everything except the truth. And the truth is that Wagner could never stand her shining brighter than him. From 1975, when Natalie began returning to film sets after nearly a decade away, Wagner's irritation became obvious. Newman said that every time Natalie received an invitation for a new role, Wagner would lose his temper. He always pretended to be supportive, but I heard him telling his friends, "She made her name thanks to me, and now she forgets who helped her stand tall." In Malibu, in the autumn of 1976, Newman visited them at a small party. He said Natalie was wearing a pearl-colored silk dress talking with producer Richard Gregson, the man who had helped her get the role in Inside Daisy Clover, 1965. When Gregson gently touched Natalie's shoulder while laughing, Wagner came over, face expressionless. He placed his hand on his wife's shoulder, squeezed lightly, then muttered through his teeth, "Enough! You don't need to bring up the past anymore." Gregson awkwardly walked away. Natalie only bowed her head. Newman said I saw her hand trembling. She smiled to smooth over the tension, but in that smile, I saw fear. According to many of Natalie's colleagues, Wagner's control didn't stop at jealousy. He wanted to have the final say in everything, from costumes, choice of directors, to the friends she was allowed to meet. A makeup artist who worked with Natalie on Meteor 1979 told the Los Angeles Times he came to the set for 3 days straight. He sat behind the camera, staring silently. No one dared to ask. Wagner wanted everyone to see him as the model husband. But Natalie lived in fear. In 1978, during a photo shoot for Life magazine at their Malibu estate, photographer Alan Mercer recalled, "She smiled all through the session. But when I placed my hand to adjust her dress, Wagner suddenly pulled her away. His eyes went cold and frightening. The whole crew froze like statues. The Hollywood press of that time never dared to mention anything negative about Wagner, as he was still the golden man in the public eye." But within the industry, rumors spread fast. A close friend of Natalie's screenwriter, Mark Crowley, told The New Yorker that she once came to see him late at night with a bruise still visible on her face. She said, "I slipped, but sometimes I wish I really had fallen." Paul Newman, who was filming The Verdict, 1980 at the time, kept in touch by phone. He said Natalie once called him from the set of Brainstorm, her voice tense. "She told me that Robert suddenly appeared standing behind the camera, watching Walken and her with an expression she said was like he was about to explode. She laughed it off, but I heard the tremor in her voice." Wagner began drinking more heavily. Whenever Natalie attended an event alone, he would call her repeatedly. A hotel employee at the Beverly Hills Hotel told the Los Angeles Herald that Wagner once came in person demanding staff open her room because he was worried about his wife. Natalie stood right there, eyes wet, softly saying, "I'm fine. Please don't make a scene." The breaking point came in September 1980 at a party hosted by Warner Brothers in Los Angeles to promote Brainstorm. Newman said he happened to be there when Wagner walked in and saw Walken talking with Natalie in a corner. He stopped, filled his glass with wine, then threw it to the floor. The sound of shattering silenced the entire room. Natalie stood frozen, and Wagner said just one sentence, cold enough to chill the air. "Don't try to turn me into the extra." From then on, Natalie gradually avoided appearing in public with her husband. She took fewer roles, spending more time on set. In her private diary, later revealed by her manager, she wrote, "He loves me in a way that makes me disappear." Wagner, in Newman's eyes, was a man who couldn't live without attention. He needed an audience, even in real life, Newman said. Without them, he lost his sense of direction. And Natalie, poor Natalie, was the only stage he had left. By the end of 1980, Natalie began having nightmares, according to a close friend. She said she often dreamed of standing on a ship's deck in the middle of the night sea, surrounded only by the sound of breaking glass and someone's heavy breathing. When asked, she said, "I'm not afraid of the sea. I'm afraid of his eyes when no one's watching." Paul Newman replayed those words in his mind for years. He knew that the fire of jealousy was smoldering, and Hollywood, as always, chose silence. "I once believed he was just a man, afraid of losing the woman he loved," Newman said. "But then I realized he was afraid of losing himself, and she was merely the mirror reflecting that fear." The more he tried to preserve his perfect image, the further Wagner drifted from the truth. The more jealous he became, the more he exposed the weakness he'd spent his life hiding. "A man like that," Newman said, "will do anything not to fade, even destroy the one standing beside him." No one knows when the light in Natalie's eyes began to fade, but by early 1981, everyone around her could see she had changed. She spoke little, smiled less, and when someone asked about Wagner, she only gave a sad smile. "Hollywood wants a beautiful love story, and we have to play our parts." Newman later said, "That was when I knew the tragedy had already begun, only waiting for the curtain to fall." No one knows when the light in Natalie's eyes began to fade, but by early 1981, everyone around her could see she had changed. She spoke little, smiled less, and when someone asked about Wagner, she only gave a sad smile. "Hollywood wants a beautiful love story, and we have to play our parts." Paul Newman later said, "That was when I knew the tragedy had already begun, only waiting for the curtain to fall." When Natalie joined the Brainstorm Project, the science fiction film directed by Douglas Trumbull in North Carolina, she met Christopher Walken, a man very different from anyone she had known. Quiet, intelligent, with eyes cold, yet deep. Walken made Natalie feel listened to, something she hadn't felt for years in the Malibu beach house. According to Newman in a 2007 audio recording, Natalie once called him late at night from the Raleigh hotel where the crew was staying. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper, Newman said. "She told me, 'Paul, he's not like the others. He doesn't try to possess me.'" On set, Walken and Natalie often talked long after filming ended. Many crew members said the two shared a strange chemistry, subtle but easy to notice. The New York Post in October 1981 wrote that Walken and Wood are so in sync they make the audience forget they're only co-stars. Rumors spread quickly. Wagner, then in Los Angeles, heard the whispers. According to his friend director Henry Jaglom Wagner, said at a Beverly Hills party, "If she betrays me again, I won't let it go." From North Carolina, Natalie called Newman. She said she wasn't having an affair, Newman recalled. "But I heard the conflict in her voice." She said Walken made her feel risked, a simple thing but precious for someone who had lived too long under control. Walken, when asked about the relationship in a 1986 interview, only said we were friends. But sometimes, in that world, friendship itself is dangerous. Wagner didn't believe in friendship. He began calling the hotel constantly. A production assistant from Brainstorm told the Los Angeles Herald Robert spoke to the front desk asking if anyone was in Natalie's room. He told them to report back if she had visitors. Everyone was terrified. When Natalie returned to Los Angeles in November 1981, she carried a different look. She was thinner, quieter, but sometimes smiled for real, something Paul Newman said I hadn't seen in years. One night at an after-party on Sunset Boulevard, Natalie greeted Newman, then softly whispered, "Paul, if anything happens, don't believe what they say." He stayed silent, didn't ask, because in that voice he heard a faint farewell. Those around them also began to sense the tension. People. Magazine editor Grace Kelly, not the actress of the same name, later revealed that she had interviewed Wagner a few days before the Catalina trip. He became agitated whenever someone mentioned Wagner. Kelly said, "When I asked, he looked straight at me and said, 'No one gets between my wife and me.'" According to Newman, Natalie was still trying to keep the peace. She invited Wagner and Wagner to spend the weekend together on the yacht Splendor as a way to clear up misunderstandings. But Newman said he already saw the ending. "I told her, 'Don't go. He doesn't want to make peace.' But she only smiled sadly. She always believed things could be fixed." The night before the trip, Newman received Natalie's final call. She said she didn't want to end things like a coward. She wanted to tell Robert everything about Wagner, about the marriage that was already dead. Newman recalled, "I asked if she was afraid. She stayed quiet for a few seconds, then said, 'Of course I am. But I'm tired, Paul. Tired of acting.'" In the last days before leaving for Catalina, someone saw Wagner and Wagner having lunch together at La Scala in Beverly Hills. The waiter remembered the heavy atmosphere. "They didn't talk much," he said. "Only Robert was leading the conversation. He said something, then laughed dryly. Wagner just nodded." Wagner later told a People reporter, "I invited him to lunch to clear things up. It wasn't anything serious." But to Newman, it wasn't that simple. He said, "I know the look of a jealous man. It's the same look I've seen in those who've already lost themselves." When the Splendor yacht departed at the end of November 1981, no one but them knew what really happened. 3 people. A woman exhausted from playing the role of a devoted wife, a man consumed by jealousy, and a third caught in the storm, stepped onto a small boat into the dark sea. Paul Newman said in a recording made years later, "I don't know what happened between them, but I know one thing: when jealousy meets fame, the ending is never peaceful." And that night, Hollywood lost an angel. No one truly knew what happened between the 3 until Paul Newman spoke of what no one dared to mention. And that is where the next chapter begins. The fateful night aboard the Splendor, when the truth surfaced on the cold Sheehan like a curse from Hollywood itself. On the night of November 28, 1981, the Splendor left Catalina Harbor under a misty sky. Aboard were only 4 people: Robert Wagner, Natalie Wood, Christopher Walken, and Captain Dennis Davern. From the distant shore, their lights flickered like a calm ribbon across the water. But hours later, the ocean swallowed everything. When dawn came, only Natalie's body was found, floating near the yacht, face down, still wearing her red nightgown and an unzipped life jacket. Police quickly ruled it a drunken accident. But Paul Newman said he had read the first report and knew something was wrong. She was afraid of water, he said in a 2007 recording. Natalie would never climb down into a dinghy on her own, especially not in the dark. The original Los Angeles County autopsy showed more than 30 bruises on Natalie's body, on her wrists, arms, knees, and the back of her neck, yet the final conclusion labeled them impact injuries from the fall. In 2011, when the case was reopened, the supplemental report stated clearly, the injuries occurred before the victim entered the water. Captain Davern, who had stayed silent for 3 decades, finally confessed in a CBS News interview, "I lied for years. I did it because Robert told me to. He said, there's nothing to say. She had an accident. If you want to keep your job, keep your mouth shut." Davern said he was paid a large sum weeks after the death under the label of a loyalty bonus. He also revealed that after Natalie died, Wagner called the head of MGM, a close friend and investor in Heart, to Heart, the TV series Wagner was starring in. And within a day, every reporter following the case had their access revoked. "I got it," Davern said. He had powerful backing. According to partially declassified FBI files from 2018, Wagner had close ties with 2 Warner Communications executives and a California congressman. When the investigation began, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Office received orders to reduce media attention. In other words, someone wanted the story buried. Newman believed Wagner used every connection to bury the truth. He knew exactly how Hollywood worked, Newman said. Money, fame, and the fear of losing your image, they can buy silence. The Hollywood Reporter revealed that just 2 days after the incident, Wagner's PR agency had hired a crisis management legal team overnight, and dozens of articles were pulled before morning. A Los Angeles Times journalist recalled that when she tried to publish a piece about the argument heard on the yacht, she received a call from a man with a low voice who simply said, "Don't dig deeper." She died because Hollywood wanted it that way. The story was killed. Newman believed Wagner didn't act out of sudden rage, but calculation. He knew that if Natalie left, he'd lose everything. His image, his career, and the fragile fame Hollywood had kept for him. And to keep that role, Wagner chose silence, bribery, and manipulation. Crew members from Brainstorm later revealed that days before the trip, Natalie had arrived on set with a fresh bruise on her wrist. She laughed and said she'd tripped on the stairs, but her eyes looked tired. A makeup artist told Vanity Fair she didn't cry, just stayed quiet. When I asked, she said, "Sometimes love hurts." We all knew what she meant. What enraged Newman wasn't only the death, but the lie that followed. He showed it up at the funeral, with a calm face, a gentle gaze like a man in mourning. The press called him the most heartbroken man in Hollywood. No one knew he'd directed the entire performance. Even Captain Davern disappeared from the public after 1983. He moved live reclusively in Florida and only occasionally wrote to Newman. In one letter later published, Davern wrote, "I saw what I shouldn't have seen, but he, Wagner, had enough power to make me the liar. The truth still rests beneath the Catalina waters." Hollywood never wants to remember because every time Natalie Wood's name is spoken, it brings back the same question. How could a woman afraid of water wearing a nightgown and a life jacket fall from a yacht without a sound. Paul Newman called it a perfectly orchestrated silence. He said Robert Wagner lived his whole life playing the perfect gentleman. Even when the truth came out, he stayed in character, polite, composed, and utterly false. In 2018, when Los Angeles police officially changed Natalie's cause of death to undetermined, one investigator said bluntly on CBS, Robert Wagner was the last person to see Natalie Wood alive. Yet the case remains shelved. No evidence, no trial, only silence. In his final recorded words, Paul Newman spoke in a hoarse whisper. He didn't kill her with a knife, nor did he push her with his hands. He killed her with fame, with power, and with the fear that Hollywood gave him. Natalie Wood didn't die from falling. She was pulled down by a man more afraid of truth than death. To this day, the splendor remains anchored in an old shipyard in San Pedro, silver-painted and silent. Whenever the wind brushes against its hull, some say they can still hear a faint voice calling in the night. Maybe it's Natalie's, or maybe it's just the sea murmuring, reminding Hollywood that some truths never sink no matter how deep they're buried. The voice lowers. Paul Newman once said, Hollywood can bury anything except what a man says before he dies. He passed away in 2008 in Westport, Connecticut, taking with him the secrets Hollywood wanted forgotten. 10 years later, his confession tape resurfaced, the frail, slow voice cutting like a knife through the wall of silence Robert Wagner had built for decades. Wagner's family still denies everything. He has never gone to court, never confessed to anything. But every time Natalie Wood's name is mentioned, the public asks again. Perhaps she never fell into the sea. Perhaps she was pushed. Those who were there, the witnesses who have grown old, the fading photographs, all say the same thing. Hollywood doesn't just create dreams. It knows how to hide nightmares. In his final recording, Newman softly said, "Truth saves no one. It only makes liars afraid." Maybe he was right. Among all the glitz and lights there are secrets. Only the dying dare to speak. And those words, faint trembling, are stronger than every defense Hollywood ever built. 40 years have passed, but whenever the night wind blows over Catalina Bay, people still whisper her name, Natalie Wood, like a wound that never heals. And Newman's words still echo. As a reminder, truth can be buried, but it never dies. Some truths are buried for decades, and some confessions only surface when the last light goes out. Natalie Wood may have found peace, but her story and Robert Wagner's still makes all of Hollywood bow its head. If you believe that truth will always rise, even when buried at the bottom of the sea, leave a heart beneath this video. Share this story so more people will know that behind the glittering smiles, there are shadows an entire industry is trying to forget. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss the real stories, the secrets Hollywood once tried to hide. Because here we don't tell fairy tales. We tell the truth.